I watched Wipeout Season 1 for the first time. Let's talk about it. As you already know, I'm a huge fan of the British version of Total Wipeout. While I was watching, I took notes of my thoughts and to keep track of what was happening. To avoid copyright, I'm only able to show pictures instead of the footage. Before I go over each individual episode, here's some of the basic information. Instead of one host, there are two, John Henson and John Anderson. Drew Wagner was on site. 24 people competed instead of 20. Each episode has its own name, and there is no champion special at the end of the season. Now I'll go over each individual episode, going over notable moments, the obstacles, and more. Let's start with episode 1. One of the first things I noticed while watching the intro was that the obstacles seemed smaller in scale and lower to the water. This isn't a bad thing, just something I noticed. I also saw many of the same obstacles from Total Wipeout, but with different variations, which was very exciting. The obstacles in this episode were the topple towers, the sucker punch, the bigger balls, and the cookie cutter, making this course very similar to the first one in Total Wipeout. The ramp in the beginning is not as slippery as Total Wipeout's, making it easier to get through quickly. The topple towers is a classic and seem pretty much the same as Total Wipeout. The sucker punch and the bigger balls are mostly the same as Total Wipeout as well. The cookie cutter was a good obstacle. I'd say I prefer this over the wall swing since there is a more clear objective. Nick Leland crossed the first set of the top towers and got a time of 1 minute 59 seconds. Jesse Duran cleared the first set of the top towers. Travis Mitchell cleared the cookie cutter and got a time of 1 minute 55 seconds, which is the fastest of the day. And Arthur Sevcik might have cleared the first set of topple towers, but it's hard to tell since the fast cuts. And he got a time of 2 minutes 2 seconds. I was rooting for Nick, Travis, and Arthur Sevcik was my prediction to win, as I said in my reaction video. The editing for this episode's qualifier was very similar to Total Wipeout, but the rest of the episodes were not. The last names are shown on the leaderboard, but the times and placements in the qualifier are not. Only a few of the competitors' times are shown, while the rest are unknown. This is a really big problem I have with the show, since I like to gather data like this to make rankings. However, maybe this isn't completely a bad thing. The qualifier in general is way less of a focus compared to Total Wipeout, where it takes up half of the show. Many of the competitors are barely shown, only put in montages, and the ones who don't qualify aren't even named. This gives more time to the other 3 rounds, which is something that I got more used to as I got farther into the season. The sweeper was pretty much exactly like Total Wipeout UK, except there is a $1,000 cash prize for being the last person standing. Andrew Candyman Ritter got first place, but he wasn't even shown in the qualifier. The first time I saw him on the leaderboard, I thought I just forgot about him, but he really just wasn't even shown. The 3 people I'm rooting for all made it through. The third round is Dizzy Dummies, and only one person goes through each round. This was very odd to me, and I highly preferred the Total Wipeout way. There were 4 rounds, meaning 4 people made it to the Wipeout zone. This surprised me, but it was a nice change. I thought they would just go 24 to 12 to 6 to 3, but instead of 3, they go from 6 to 4. The obstacles with the tippy tables just like Total Wipeout, and now the hopping blocks, which is a new obstacle. The tippy tables are good, but they seem a lot less slippery, which I don't think is a good thing, especially since only one person goes through. The hopping blocks seem like they would be good, since it looks a lot like the barrel run, but I didn't like it as much. Dizzy Dummies took up a very big portion of the show, and it got a little boring, especially when it was just 2 people in the end and they were very tired and not trying as hard anymore. Travis Mitchell was the first to make it through. 2 cool moments I noted were Kevin Ashrams had a very close fail on the hopping blocks, and Nick Leland sprinted across the tippy tables. The 3 people I'm rooting for were the first 3 to qualify, and then Jesse Duran also made it. The obstacles in the Wipeout zone were Killer Surf, Barrel Run, Climbing Wall, but that wasn't really mentioned to be one of the obstacles, and then the spinner and 4 launch pads. The Barrel Run looked a little different, but pretty much exactly like Total Wipeout. The Climbing Wall was the Wipeout wall, but it didn't have water. The spinner goes faster than it does in Total Wipeout. The launch pad has 4 trampolines, which was very cool. This is my favorite obstacle in the show so far. In this season, you have to restart an obstacle when you fail it in the Wipeout zone, just like the first season of Total Wipeout. While this seems like a logically more fair way to hold the competition, the results from the other series of Total Wipeout make me prefer that method more. Also, when you exceed the fast time set by a previous runner in the Wipeout zone, your run is stopped. I really don't like this because this means final placements can't be determined, and it's unfair to people who were later in the run order, and is less information that can be used to rank the competitors. This is my least favorite thing about the show. Nick Leland goes first, and when he goes to the barrel run, his time is already around 45 seconds, which is way slower than people in Total Wipeout, who get there by around 15 to 20 seconds. I can't help but think these are added seconds. He then gets through the first obstacles quick and tries to dismount from the spinner in half a rotation and fails to dismount. He gets past it on his second try, then fails the launch pads, which he also beats on his second try, and finishes the course in a time of 5 minutes 43 seconds, which to me seems slow because I'm used to the Total Wipeout standards. Jesse ran for 1 second and failed the climbing wall, and after recovering was already at 4 minutes. Again, I have to think that this is an inaccurate time. Impressively, she cleared the last 2 obstacles with no fails and got a time of 5 minutes 36 seconds, taking the lead. Now there is no announcement for the competitors to reveal who was faster, which was a part I personally liked from Total Wipeout. Arthur Sevcik made it to the spinner quickly, clearing that and having a really good pace to the launch pads. He fails them once and finishes with a time of 2 minutes 40 seconds, beating the other times by almost 3 minutes. Travis Mitchell had a rigged pace to the bower run, but he made it to the launch pads without any fails and going fast. But then he fails it. His recovery time was very sketchy because we saw him struggling in the water, making it seem like he would be slower to recover than the others, but his time didn't match that. This was likely just to make it dramatic, which shows that they're probably rigging the times in the Wipeout zone. He ended up timing out on his second attempt at the launch pads, meaning Arthur won as I predicted. My hope for the rest of the season is that someone bounces straight across all 4 launch pads. In the outro, I saw more obstacles previewed that I was excited about. I gave this episode a 7.5 out of 10. It didn't make me very excited for the rest of the season, but I did feel the same way when I watched the first episode of Total Wipeout Series 1, and then that series got progressively better, so maybe this season will too. Just like Total Wipeout, the slippery stairs is the second obstacle introduced in the first slot in the qualifier. I've never been a huge fan of this obstacle because there isn't a clear-cut way to determine if a competitor clears it or not. It is, however, cool when people run over it super quickly, but if there was a 3-attempt rule and then you have to swim around it after that, it would be better. The block swing was the last obstacle and it seemed like a good idea, but it ended up being very forgettable to me. Andy Pagan in the qualifier was slipping down the ramp to the bigger balls, which is not something I've ever seen in Total Wipeout. Jessica Bird was incredibly close to being the first competitor to ever clear the bigger balls. Jim Wakefield was going very fast with the course, not clearing any of the last 3 obstacles but getting a fast time of 1 minute 33 seconds, which was the fastest of the season so far. Joey Byham also goes very fast and got a time of 1 minute 34 seconds. Darren Miller was going very fast and cleared the block swing, getting the fast time of 1 minute 19 seconds. Eagle Kattendig was the last runner and beat the last obstacle as well, getting a time of 1 minute 32 seconds. This episode had many more competitive times than last episode, which made it exciting to see. I predicted that Darren will win, and I also wanted Jim and Ingle to make it to the Wipeout zone. While watching this qualifier, I noticed I was enjoying it a lot more than the first episode. The sweeper had sacks just like some of the episodes from Series 2 of Total Wipeout, and that's a decent variation. Jim Wakefield won, and this round has been a little boring to me these past 2 episodes. The treadmill was a time trial instead of a side-by-side. I actually preferred this. This treadmill was a door jam, and the addition this time was tennis balls, which seemed fine, but they didn't end up doing much. The competitors kept trying until they completed it, which is very different from Total Wipeout. The treadmill gets slower each time. Joey Byham takes a little over a minute, but Darren Miller, my prediction to win, takes 4.5, so at this point I thought he was going to get eliminated. Kelly Duffy quits, Jim Wakefield gets the fast time of 1 minute exactly, and then David Goyle gets a 4:36. I think this has to be a rigged time because it is so close to the other one. Eagle goes last but loses by 0.06 seconds. This meant he didn't make it to the Wipeout zone as I predicted. I cannot be convinced that these times aren't made up to make it more dramatic. The rankings are probably accurate because that would be sadistic otherwise, but I doubt the times are accurate. David was emotional after barely making it through, and this was joked about for the rest of the season, but I thought this was a nice moment because it reminds me more of the intensity of Total Wipeout, usually not seen in American Wipeout. I overall enjoyed this round. The results were strange, but it was entertaining. There were no obstacle changes from last time in the Wipeout zone, so I assumed it would be like this for the rest of the season, which in my opinion is a good thing. David Goyle goes first. Just like many other runs, his pace up to the bower run was very slow. He failed the spinner twice, and by the time he was out for his 3rd attempt, he was already at 8 minutes. To me, this was shocking, because we never even saw anyone go to 8 minutes in Total Wipeout. On the launch pads, I believe he was the first to jump straight from the 3rd to the 4th one, and then he cleared it in a time of 8 minutes 50 seconds, the slowest this season so far. Jim Wakefield was considered to be the favorite by the announcers since he got first in both of the multiplayer rounds. He knocks one of the spikes off the spinner, which was a first. He ended up failing this obstacle twice, and his recovery times are very slow. He then fails the very beginning of the launch pads, but it strangely only takes him 25 seconds to get it back up. finished the course in 7 minutes 34, still slower than all four from the first episode. Joey Byham struggled in the battle run and then failed it, being the first to do so. He takes a long time to get back up, and then he failed the climbing wall, but he's allowed to go past it because it's not an official obstacle, I guess. He gets on the spinner and then throws in the towel, from exhaustion. This course is brutal, far more than any of the Wipeout zones from Total Wipeout. Darren Miller failed the climbing wall too, then recovering very slow. Remember, he got a fast time in the qualifier, so he shouldn't be going slowly like this. He takes 2 attempts on the spinner, and when he gets to the launch pads, it's very close, so he tries to jump from the 3rd to 4th trampoline, but failed, and then he timed out. Jim Wakefield won the episode, also getting first in the last 3 rounds. I gave this episode an 8.5 out of 10. It was a lot more entertaining than the first one, and made me excited to see what would be coming next. Something I noticed is that they play a different sound clip from a competitor in that episode at the end of the intro, which was a nice touch. The donut run looked like a cool variation of the topple towers, but it ended up being overly difficult. The sucker punch had no holds, and this was a decent change. At least there's a difference in this obstacle, unlike Total Wipeout, which stays basically the same the whole time. Pole vault was a very cool looking obstacle, but it was pretty unclear how to go about crossing it. I still really liked it, and it's one of my favorites from the season. Nick Lewis got a time of 1 minute 36 seconds without clearing either of the last 2 obstacles, the fastest time of the day. Jared and Joshua got a time of 1 minute 40 seconds. Ariel Tweedo was the first competitor to ever clear the bigger balls. It was way less of a dramatic and hyped moment, which is a key distinction between this and Total Wipeout. She then somehow couldn't see the pole on the next obstacle and just jumped into the water. Kyle Adler cleared the first set of the donut run and got a time of 1 minute 41 seconds. Chris Loeca somehow got stuck inside the bigger ball holder, which is a very unique fail. Jennifer Tapero almost crosses the sucker punch, but still no one has done it successfully. Tara was the only person to clear the pole vault, holding onto the pole the entire time. I wasn't expecting this to be the way to clear it. I was rooting for Nick Lewis and Ariel Tweedo. Even though the qualifier is a lot different, I was enjoying the fast pace. The sweeper had his 3rd variation in 3 episodes, The Spikes of Doom. It was a pretty good one. Something I didn't realize until this episode, and I'm still not even sure of, that the sweeper stops when enough people fail and then starts again for the last man standing, instead of just keeping going. Jared and Joshua had an incredible save, but couldn't recover quick enough, and then Kyle Adler won. Dizzy Dummies returned for its 2nd time. The crazy beam seemed similar to Total Wipeout, but there was a new obstacle, the pole vault. It seemed like a cool idea, but I wasn't sure how it would work, since it seemed like they needed to be reset and there wasn't enough for all the competitors. There was a little segment talking about the cold weather, which was nice since Total Wipeout never has deviations from the rigid format. Jaron throws up, which never happened on Total Wipeout. This causes the pole vault to be skipped for the first time. It was mentioned that the spinning lasts for 90 seconds instead of 40 seconds in Total Wipeout. When they finally went to the pole vault, everyone failed it, so then they just went back to the crazy beams for the 3rd time. To me, this was very underwhelming. Kyle Adler got 1st place. Nick Lewis and Ariel Tweedo made it through, and I was rooting for both. It seems like my predictions always end up being right so far, but that's probably because the people who make it this far are shown more in the beginning. Killer Surf is now with a sled, which is the first difference in the wipe zone, albeit a minor one. Ariel Tweedo failed the spinner twice and the launch pads once, recovering very slowly from her fails and finishing the course with the slowest time yet, 15 minutes 57 seconds, twice as long as the slowest time from Total Wipeout. Slower times are coming every single episode. Neil Smith failed the climbing wall on the spinner, recovering very slowly as well. He then failed the launch pads twice, and on his 3rd attempt he was so close to Ariel's time. I think that this must be rigged because there is no way that the times are this close when they are this high. He finished the course, but it is too late, 16 minutes 3 seconds. Nick Lewis failed the wipeout wall, the spinner, and the launch pads 1 time each, but went a little faster and got a time of 9 minutes 33 seconds, taking the lead. Kyle Adler went very fast at the course, making it to the launch pads with no fails. He failed the launch pads once, but finished the course with a time of 3 minutes 23 seconds, winning by far. He beat the other 2 finalists who I was rooting for. He also became the 2nd competitor to win 3 rounds of the episode. I gave this episode an 8 out of 10. The qualifier was great, but the last 3 rounds were not as good. The rolling logs were called the tumble tubes, also making its first appearance in the 4th episode of the season. They were also hollow, unlike Total Wipeout. The sucker punch holds have returned. The wall swing has a trapeze swing instead of a rope, which is a slight variation but it's pretty cool. Ben was the first to clear the tumble tubes. Mark Natividad tries a crazy jump on the tumble tubes and finished the course in 1 minute 41 seconds, the fastest of the day. I was rooting for him to win. On the sweeper there were dodgeballs. I was skeptical of this at first because I think that people could just sabotage others. but no one was successful at knocking anyone else off. People only got 2 dodgeballs for the entire round, and he couldn't be replenished. Gabriel Lawrence ended up winning this round. The Dreadmo returned, now with big flip-flops and sea creatures. Now it's about staying on as long as you can. It gets faster and faster as it keeps going. This was a pretty good round. The times were all similar, all in the 1 minute range. I really like one person going at a time over 2 people versing in Total Wipeout. In my opinion, it's a lot more fair. Keith Beyonde lost by less than 1 second, getting 5th place. Robert Schweitzer stayed on for the longest time, 1 minute 42 seconds. Mark Natividad, who I was rooting for, made it to the Wipeout zone. The climbing wall is now replaced with the rope wall, which is pretty good. Robert Schweitzer failed the spinner twice and then was at over 10 minutes. He then jumps from the first to the second trampoline, the first person to do so, and finishes the course in 11 minutes 35 seconds. Gabriel Lawrence failed the spinner 3 times and then threw in the towel. Mark Natividad failed the spinner, but cleared it on his second attempt in just half a rotation. He then took 2 attempts at the launch pads and finished in 8 minutes 23 seconds. Sei Yabenda went very slowly. She failed the spinner and on her second attempt, never attempted the dismount, eventually timing out. Mark Natividad won the episode, making my prediction correct. I didn't feel like this competitor group was very interesting to me. I gave this episode a 7.5 out of 10. This episode was an all-ball qualifier. I like how the whole course had a theme. The hurdle turtles from the Total Wipeout are called the dirty balls here. Something I always disliked about this obstacle was how you couldn't distinguish between a fail and a clear. Colorful balls were in the sucker punch mud, which was a nice addition. The wrecking ball is called the ball swing, a decent obstacle, and this version was just lowered to the water. Jacob Mann does the splits on the bigger balls, which I recognize from Total Wipeout's Series 1 award show. Jeremy Olsen runs across the bigger balls out of nowhere. He then finishes the course with 1 minute 14 seconds, the fastest time of the day, and the fastest time this season so far. Casey O'Farrell gets a time of 1 minute 37 seconds. Heather didn't even attempt any of the obstacles. Richard basically clears the first set of the dirty balls. Dana Jameson almost cleared the bigger balls. Ben Kronberg cleared the bigger balls and was the only to clear the ball swing, which was edited in a unique way. He got a time of 1 minute 36 seconds. I'm rooting for Jeremy Olsen to win, and I also want Ben Kronberg to make it to the Wipeout zone. The sweeper has a hoop on it, which was very exciting to me. It's like a different variation of the crusher, but it ended up being a little bit underwhelming. Casey O'Farrell won. Dizzy Dummies was back for a 3rd time. The slippery snakes was the first obstacle, which looked cool, but it seemed pretty easy. Barrel Run didn't have a middle platform this time, which looked difficult. The barrels seemed to be softer than the ones in Total Wipeout. The competitors were given Mexican food for lunch, which is a strange way to alter the competition. Jacob Mann quit the competition. David Matz was first to get to the Wipeout zone, and Ben Kronberg was eliminated, which was shocking, but Jeremy Olsen made it. In this episode, you go bareback on the kill surf. The spinner has 2 entrances, while the others are blocked. You can't exit through the one you came from. It's a nice variation, but it should have been colored like Double Cross. David Matz failed the barrel run twice, which was strange. He then failed the rope wall and the spinner, but finished the course in 8 minutes 27 seconds despite 4 fails. Dana Jameson cleared everything until the launch pads, which he failed twice. She beat it on the 3rd try and got a time of 3 minutes 26 seconds. The competitors are going faster in this episode. Jeremy also failed the rope swing twice and then the spinner. He timed out afterwards, which was shocking. This made my prediction of him winning wrong, meaning both of my 2 predictions were incorrect this episode. Casey O'Farrell only failed the spinner and the launch pads 1 time each, winning with a time of 5 minutes 30. After he got to the finishing platform, he was only shown for a few seconds, and then he cut off. That's a major difference between here and Total Wipeout. I gave this episode a 9 out of 10. Buoy Run is the walk of shame from Total Wipeout. Field goal swing is the pole vault but with the trapeze swing. This seems harder because you can't just hold on to something to get to the bigger ball at the end. Jessica Bartoni was the first to ever cross the sucker punch. Charles Zakua was very fast across the buoy run. He got a time of 1 minute 32 seconds, the fastest of the day. Chris Kenyon got a 1:39. Timothy Tone cleared the buoy run quickly and got a time of 1 minute 49 seconds. I'm rooting for Charles Zakua. This qualifier seemed a little bit slower paced this episode. The sweeper had crowbars on it, which was very random, and had crows and smoke. It seemed like it would be weird, but it was actually more entertaining than the other ones. Robert Duff won. The Dreadmo was back, now with the Wrecking Ball just like Total Wipeout. For comedy, the Wrecking Ball was talking. The Wrecking Ball goes very low before knocking people off, probably even lower than Total Wipeout. Chris Kenyon fell trying to show off. Charles Akuya won, and he was my prediction to win the episode, so it's good he's making it to the Wipeout zone. In the Wipeout zone, foam was added to the water. This made the whole course seem even more intimidating than it already was, and made recoveries way slower. It was an awesome change. Competitors can choose between 3 methods to go down Killer Surf: the sled, the inner tube, or the air mattress. The water wall was introduced, the same as the Wipeout wall from Total Wipeout. Robert Duff failed the barrel run and the spinner twice. Since the foam slowed him down, these 3 fails amounted to his time of 16 minutes 49 seconds, the slowest so far. John Curtis failed the barrel run twice and took over 6 minutes to get past it. He then failed the water wall and took 4 minutes to get back up, despite failing right next to the ladder. Even though there's foam, I can't bring myself to believe this. He then failed the spinner twice, and swimming through the foam looked like torture. One of his fails was brutal, and it got replayed a lot, giving this round an extra level of intensity to it. He then timed out. Jessica Bertoni failed the Wipeout wall, and then the spinner a record 3 times, timing out as well. Charles only failed the spinner, and got a time of 6 minutes 22 seconds, winning by 10 whole minutes. I predicted he would win, and he's the 3rd competitor to win 3 of the 4 rounds. I gave this episode an 8.5 out of 10. This episode is the award special. Awards are called Wipeys. I'm just going to go over a few of the notable things that happened in this episode. The sweeper variations from different episodes were recapped, which I thought was nice. 4 big fails were highlighted for the Best Wipeout award during the episode. The first one was a field goal fail from episode 6 from Irwin. I remembered because they showed a lot of replays in the original episode. Second one was John from episode 6, who failed the spinner in the Wipeout zone, which is my favorite fail. Third was a faceplant on the sweeper, which I didn't remember about, but fourth was Jacob Mann from episode 5, who iconically failed the bigger balls, and this one ended up winning as expected. After the breaks in this episode, there were fake ads for Wipeout products, which was cool. The first one was Sucker Punch Mod, the second one was Dread Bill Foam, then Bubble Bath, then Wipeout Activewear, then the Wipeout Toothbrush, which is the Spikes of Doom from episode 3. At one point there was an international segment. I thought it would show different countries Wipeout like in Total Wipeout, but they couldn't since this was the first one that aired. Instead, it was Andrew Pagana from episode 5 with his big red ball attempt, and there was announcers from different countries, UK, Mexico, and Germany. I thought that this was Slide in 2022, but honestly it was pretty funny. There was a guest obstacle award, meaning a variation of round 2 or 3. The YP was given to the talking wrecking ball from the treadmill. There was a segment about people who quit the course. What was nice about this was that they put the episode that they were in, which was nice. And then Jill also even went to the studio for a little segment, which was cool. There's a segment of people who sing and dance, there's a battle cry segment, and then there's a Lifetime Achievement Award given to the bigger balls. I found this episode boring at first, but it got better as it went on. In my opinion, it's better than the award special from Total Wipeout, but I'm confused why it wasn't at the end of the season. I gave this episode an 8.5 out of 10. Now we're back to normal episodes. The top tires return for the second time. The butt kicker is a variation of the sucker punch. Shoes instead of boxing gloves, and you have to put your back to the wall. This is by far the worst obstacle this season. But the last obstacle, the donut swing, might be even worse. You just swing into them and swim to the finishing platform, forcing you to go into the water. April Robles cleared the top towers, and then got a time of 1 minute 48 seconds, the fastest of the day. I wanted her to win the episode, which would make her the first ever female champion. She's also the first woman to get the fast time in the qualifier. Richard Mendoza then got a time of 1 minute 53 seconds. I guess I'm rooting for April Robles and Richard Mendoza. This was the worst qualifier by far. The Crusher made his first appearance. By the end, the arms got very close together, maybe even more close than Total Wipeouts. April Robles and Richard Mendoza got first and second, just like the qualifier. The floating block maze is the dock maze from Total Wipeout. It's an okay obstacle. The teeter-totters were very iconic from Total Wipeout. There's no ropes, but there's a shallow angle, and it's probably less slippery. Richard Mendoza was the first to go through. This rivalry is making the episode a little bit better. April Robles got through third, so both of the competitors I wanted to go far made it to the Wipeout zone. Shane Johnson had 2 very close fails in the last round on the teeter-totters, but then was eliminated. There were colorful balls added to the Killer Surf, which to me looked very cool. April Robles failed the barrel run and then the spinner twice. On her third attempt, she went to the center, which was new. She went way slower and finished the course in 16 minutes 46 seconds. Michael Bertrand failed the spinner twice, then he took off one of the beams. He also fell into the water while trying to get back up. After failing the launch pads, he quit even though he had 6 minutes to spare. Carlos Moreno failed the spinner twice and the launch pads once, but his recoveries were very slow and ended up timing out. Richard Mendoza failed the spinner twice and the launch pads once, just like the previous competitor, but went faster and beat the launch pads on his second attempt, finishing in 10 minutes 55 seconds and winning the episode. This was the biggest opportunity for a female champion, and it still hasn't happened. I give this episode a 7 out of 10. It's the worst one so far. This episode is completely different from the other ones. There are 32 competitors. It starts off with the human pinball, which is not really an obstacle, but it looks cool. And then there's no obstacle before the sucker punch. There's a rope up the ramp to the bigger balls, which are closer together and probably easier to cross. The leap of faith is a good obstacle, and it's bigger here than Total Wipeout. Nick Ballard crossed the bigger balls and got the new fast time ever, 59 seconds. This is the fast of the day, and I don't know if this will ever be beat, but if you know, please don't spoil it for me. Daniel Drew lands human pinball. Katie Mayfield fell to the side of human pinball, but then cleared the sucker punch, the bigger balls, and the leap of faith, finishing the course in 1 minute 1 second. This was considered a perfect run, and I agree because it's like falling into the water in the beginning ramp, like Not Tough William did. So this makes it the first ever perfect run in American Wipeout. Christian Reddy Huff cleared the leap of faith and got a time of 1 minute 10 seconds. This is the third time this episode that there's been a faster qualifier run than any time in any other episode. I'm rooting for Nick Ballard to win, but I would also like Katie Mayfield and Christian Reddy Huff to make it to the Wipeout zone. The sweeper had 16 people, so there were 16 podiums, which is cool, and the color scheme was blue instead of red. After 8 people were eliminated, it didn't continue to the last person standing. Nick Ballard, Katie Mayfield, and Christian Reddy Huff all made it through. There's a new round for the third round, the cookie cutter. You have to stand on a revolving platform and jump through the cutouts. If you fail, you go back to the last cutout that you didn't make it through. The fast 4 times to the finish advance. This means 4 people were eliminated in this round instead of just 2. It seemed promising and ended up being pretty good. Everyone was getting similar times, so it was competitive. Nick was by far my prediction to win. I would even bet money on it, but then he timed out, which was very shocking. Maybe the biggest surprise of the season. Katie Mayfield and Christian Reddy Huff made it through. The Wipeout zone was a completely different course with 2 new obstacles. The triple threat was 3 giant rotating triangles that looked pretty cool, but was very easy. Blast off looked confusing, and I couldn't really see it. It ended up being a beam with water coming out of it, which is pretty boring. The whole course is way shorter and easier than the other one, and I heavily preferred the normal one. Mitch Ronder failed the spinner once and got a time of 2 minutes 59 seconds. Scott Kessler had a crazy save on spinner and got the first ever Wipeout zone perfect run, and the fast time so far this season, 2 minutes 3 seconds. Katie failed the spinner once and timed out but finished the course unofficially. Christian got up the first ladder in just seconds, then got a perfect run and went very fast, finishing the course in the new fast time of 55 seconds. The other competitors didn't even get up the first ladder in that time. I don't think this will ever be beat. My prediction is that Season 2 will be like this course, but I have no idea why this episode is different. Maybe it's a course from a different country show, but they wouldn't build all this for one episode, right? I gave this episode an 8.5 out of 10. When I was watching episode 9, I was confused why this episode was an hour and 25 minutes long, but then I saw that they premiered these 2 episodes back to back. Now the normal episode style is back. The tumble tubes have returned from episode 4. The sucker punch has extra punch, red mud. I think this is actually a pretty cool addition. The bubble bath made its first appearance. It's blue and there isn't a hole at the bottom. The time stops when you pop back up from out of the bubbles. Brent Williams is the oldest competitor to ever compete at 63 years old. He cleared the tumble tubes and the bubble bath. Kyle Sullivan jumps across the tumble tubes and clears the bubble bath and got a time of 1 minute 42 seconds. Jesse Graff, who is now a prominent competitor in American Warrior, only failed the sucker punch, but cleared the tumble tubes, the bigger balls, and the bubble bath, getting a time of 1 minute 23 seconds. Sam Mohan cleared the sucker punch and got a time of 1 minute 55 seconds. Phil Somerville cleared the bubble bath and got the fast time of the day, 1 minute 21 seconds. Angelica Rowland also cleared the bubble bath. I'm rooting for Phil Somerville and Jesse Graff, but I already know that Jesse Graff fails the third round, so I hope that Phil's going to win. Triple Threat Sweeper contained the Crusher, the Junior Wrecking Ball, and Smoke. It still didn't make too much of a difference despite all these additions. Kyle Sullivan won. The Dreadmill had cones and goofy goggles. The 4 people who stand the longest advance, just like the sea creatures won. It was a decent round. Kyle Sullivan stayed on the longest with 1 minute 51 seconds. Jesse Graff shockingly got last place with 42 seconds. Brent Williams was the oldest competitor to ever advance to the Wipeout zone. Phil Somerville, who I'm rooting for, made it through. There was a rain tycoon during the Wipeout zone. Brent Williams failed the spinner and the launch pads 2 times each, finishing in 12 minutes 34 seconds. Phil Somerville failed the water ball and then got back up in just 10 seconds. Other people took minutes. He then failed the spinner and was forced to quit because of a shoulder injury, which was very unfortunate, deeming my prediction incorrect. Sam Mohan failed the spinner twice and the launch pads once, but went fast and got a time of 6 minutes 1 second. This could potentially become the first ever woman champion. Kyle Sullivan ran last and only failed the spinner once, and then won the episode with a time of 3 minutes 35 seconds. I gave this episode a 7.5 out of 10. The final episode of the season is not a competition, but an award ceremony. It is set at Venice Beach with a real-life crowd and John Henson, John Anderson, and Joe Wagner in person. Some contestants came too, which I found very, very cool. The top 25 moments are listed throughout the episode. When funny moments happen, the crowd hypes it up. Jim Wakefield, the winner from episode 2, performed his song for the Wipeout Zone. A few never-before-seen clips were shown. The first one was a terrified tester in the Wipeout Zone. Footage of the two Johns having fun around the beach was shown. The announcers interviewed the people around the area about the show. Carla from episode 9 came back to talk about how she's recognized from the show. I don't know if this is true or not because he was only shown in a little tiny segment in episode 9. There's a never-before-seen clip of Joe Wagner bouncing across all 4 launch pads. I'm not sure if it was actually her, but either way it was very impressive because this is what I wanted to happen since episode 1. Jessica Bertoni from episode 6 came back and talked very briefly. David Goriel from episode 2 talked about his emotions for the treadmill. There's a never-before-seen clip of a squirrel that was on the qualifying course during episode 10. Shane Johnson from episode 3 was in the crowd. Jerry Durant from episode 1 came back and went up on stage. Jacob Mann from episode 5 was in the crowd again, and the crowd was chanting his quotes. 2 of the Cougars came back for their quick interview. John pretended he ran the qualifier, and he showed a head cam, but it wasn't really him. But it was still a nice piece of footage that could be useful. William from episode 1 went on stage and showed karate moves. RG from episode 1 said her quote, which was, "I need the money." Jaron Johnson from episode 3, who was my pick to win, but quit, came back and claimed to be the spokesperson for the doggy bags and airplanes since he threw up on the Disney dummies. Now, I'm not even sure if he's joking or not. Never before seen clips of Brent Williams from episode 9 doing skills. Number 1 on the top 25 moments was Ariel Tweeta from episode 3's qualifier run. She came back and talked on stage. To end the season, the whole crowd said goodnight and big balls. I gave this episode a 9.5 out of 10. Here are just a few overall things about the season. John Henson and John Anderson were decent, but between the episodes being faster paced and there being 2 announcers, I didn't feel like I got to know them as well as I knew Richard Hammond. Joe Wagner was good, not much different from Amanda Byram honestly. The soundtrack for the show is very good, probably better than Total Wipeout. There's never outside songs though, probably to avoid copyright. Something that also adds to the qualifier being faster is that the show had the commercials during their premieres, cutting its hour-long window to around 42 minutes of actual content. It seems like a bad thing, but it actually does make the show less boring since it's more action-packed. The format of the show is not as formulaic. Sometimes there are interviews at certain points when there aren't at other times. That's different from Total Wipeout, which as I said before has a very rigid format. Since you watched to this point, I will give you a prize. Some of you already may know this, but if you want to watch Wipeout for free, this is how you do it. This is every sub 2 minute qualifier time. Some of the times may have been under 2 minutes, but they weren't shown. 28 is Nick Leland from episode 1, who got a 159. David Goriel got a 159 from episode 2. Sam Mohan from episode 10 got a 155. Travis Mitchell from episode 1 got a 155. Richard Mendoza from episode 8 got a 153. Jessica Bartoni from episode 6 got a 152. Timothy Tan from episode 6 got a 149. April Robles from episode 8 got a 148. David Matz from episode 5 got a 147. Kyle Sullivan from episode 10 got a 142. Mark Natividad from episode 4 got a 141. Tal Adler from episode 3 got a 141. Jaron Joshua from episode 3 got a 140. Chris Young from episode 6 got a 139. Casey O'Farrell got a 138, and he's from episode 5. Nick Lewis got a 136 from episode 3. Ben Cronenberg from episode 5 got a 136. Joey Byham from episode 2 got a 134. Jim Wakefield from episode 2 got a 133, and this is the fastest time without clearing a single obstacle, disregarding the slippery stairs as it's unfailable. Chris Arkua from episode 6 got a 132. Angel Kattendig from episode 2 got a 132. Jessie Graff from episode 10 got a 123, which is the fastest female time from the season. Phil Somerville from episode 10 got a time of 1 minute 21 seconds. Darren Miller from episode 2 got a time of 1 minute 19 seconds, which is the fastest time without crossing the bigger balls, not including the special episode. 4 is Jeremy Olsen from episode 5, and he got a time of 1 minute 14 seconds, the fastest time not including the special episode. The top 3 times are all from the special episode. 3 is Christian Reddyhoff, who got a 1 minute 10 seconds, the fastest time without crossing the bigger balls. 2 is Katie Mayfield, who got 1 minute 3 seconds, and number 1 is Nick Ballard, who got a 59-second run, which is the only one which is under 1 minute. Now here are the 6 bigger ball crossings. Ariel Tweedo did it in episode 3, then 2 people did it in episode 5, Jeremy Olsen and Ben Kronberg. Then 2 people did it in the special episode, even though these might have been easier, Nick Ballard and Katie Mayfield. And then the last one is Jesse Graff from episode 10. There were 9 sub-6 minute Wipeout runs. 9 was Nick Leland from episode 1 with 5 minutes 43, 8 was Jesse Durand from episode 1 with 5 minutes 36, 7 is Casey O'Farrell from episode 5 with a time of 5 minutes 30, 6 is Kyle Sullivan from episode 10 with a time of 3 minutes 35, 5 is Kyle Adler from episode 3 with a time of 3 minutes 23 seconds, 4 is Mitch Ronner from the special episode, 2 minutes 59, 3 is Arthur Sevcik, 2 minutes 40 from the first episode, and is the fastest one, not including the special episode. The top 2 are both from the special episode, Scott Kessler with 2 minutes 3 seconds, and Christian Reddyhoff with 55 seconds, the only one under 2 minutes and under 1 minute. Keep in mind that Travis from episode 1 and Katie from episode 9, the special episode, were on pace to get a sub-6 minute run as well, but they couldn't finish the run as they timed out. Here is my ranking of the 11 episodes. 11 is episode 8, which I gave a 7 out of 10. Then episode 10, 4, and 1, I all gave 7.5s. Then I gave 4 episodes an 8.5. Episode 7, 2, 6, and 9. I gave 2 episodes a 9 out of 10, episode 5 and 3. And my favorite episode of this season was episode 11, which I gave a 9.5 out of 10. Here are my top 10 favorite qualifier obstacles, not including the sucker punch with the big red balls. 10 is the ball swing from episode 5. 9 is the donut run from episode 3. 8 is the tumble tubes from episode 4. 7 is the wall swing with the trapeze, which is also from episode 4. 6 is the cookie cutter swing from episode 1. 5 is the field goal swing from episode 6. 4 is the tall towers from episode 1. 3 is the leap of faith from episode 9. 2 is buoy run from episode 6. And honorable mention is human pinball, which actually would be second place, but it doesn't exactly count as an obstacle. And that's from episode 9. And number 1 is pole vault from episode 3. My top 5 favorite multiplayer rounds was 5, Dizzy Dummies with the slippery snakes and the barrel spill from episode 5. 4 is the Dreadmill Wrecking Ball, which was in episode 6. Number 3 is the Toothbrush Sweeper, which was in episode 3. Number 2 is the Tennis Door Jam Treadmill, which was in episode 2. And number 1 is the Crusher, which was in episode 8. And now, my top 10 favorite competitors. 10 is Phil Somerville from episode 10. 9, Katie Mayfield from episode 9. 8 is Ingo Kattendag from episode 2. Number 7 is Charles Akua from episode 6. Number 6 is Christian Reddyhoff from episode 10. 5 is Casey O'Farrell from episode 5. 4 is Jeremy Olsen, also from episode 5. 3 is Ariel Tweedo from episode 3. 2 is David Goriel from episode 2. And number 1 is Nick Ballard from episode 9. So that's about it. This is my in-depth recap. Please put below any of your thoughts or comments or suggestions in the comments. I will be happy to discuss this season with any of you. I know that American Wipeout has a bigger fan base than Total Wipeout, so I will make more videos about this. Just please make me suggestions. It will be harder to make videos because the copyright is a big issue for these, but I was able to get around it for my reaction. Yeah, that's about it. I'm excited to watch season 2.